Hello and welcome to another edition of the Public Affairs Radio program on Crawford Media Group. My name is Joe Massa, and today I have a very special guest all the way from UT Southwestern Medical Center. It is the Living Donor Champion Coordinator, Ms. Taylor Maclaskey. How are you, Taylor?
Wonderful, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on the show, and you really have a very important job, and we're going to get into that in just a few moments, but it started from a personal actual connection to this. You yourself are a donor of a kidney. So I want to talk about that in just a moment, but being a Living Donor Champion Coordinator, most people think of donating your organs after your death or untimely demise, but a lot of people don't even consider the fact that you can donate certain organs while you're still kicking yourself. So you were a kidney donor. So tell me a little bit about how you fell into that, and then did that sort of lead you into this role at UT Southwestern Medical?
Yeah, so my brother was born with genetic abnormalities, and it was a lifetime of chronic illness, right? So a childhood with a sibling with chronic illness. And I kind of figured one day that I would probably donate a kidney. And this time, 13 years ago, actually, we were going through all of the testing, and we actually learned that we were a perfect genetic match, which is like the goldest standard you could possibly get. That really reduces the rejection risk, gives people, a high quality organ. But I've been advocating for living donor for a long time, as it has been, a huge portion of my life. And then UT Southwestern happened to bring this role on. And I was so excited to take it on and work with patients and their families each and every day.
Yeah, that's such a cool story. And I have to ask, just out of curiosity, is your brother a twin, or are you just regular siblings?
We are kind of Irish twins, like almost Irish twins. We're 18 months apart, so we're very, very close, but we were not actually womb mates. Yeah, that was a real blessing, right? To be a perfect genetic match, not being twins.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you can live with one kidney, as you're living proof of that yourself. But what are the other organs specifically that are meant for living donation? Obviously, we know liver can be one as well. That's actually how we met. We're working with another individual who's in search of a liver, and we'll get to how you can find out if you can help later. But what other options are there for living donors? Like what type of donations?
That's it, kidney and liver, right? You can give one kidney or you can give a portion of your liver, but that is the bulk of the wait list, right?
Absolutely. And now, do you function the same or as optimally with one kidney? Is that something that is a sort of a detriment in your life, or are you back to normal living?
It is. So it's not easy to become a living donor, right? You have to be a healthy individual. And the extensive testing that you go through really ensures your health post-donation. So there is nothing about my life that has changed or has, been a deterrent. I live completely the same that I did 13 years ago, obviously a little bit older. But yeah, I do very well. And my brother's doing very well. And I think that's really the key part here, right? Is that he's living a wonderful, happy, healthy life, and I am too.
I'm sure that you get the best Christmas presents from him every year now, because you say, "Oh, when I gave you my kidney," and he goes, "Oh, Taylor." So I've had such a cool sibling story, and it's something that I think a lot of people would do if they were faced with that. But how do you even find out if you can be a donor? Obviously, there's testing involved and blood samples and sort of physicals, but what is the process from start to finish? If today I said, I would like to try to be a donor, how do I go about that?
So each transplant center, obviously I work very specifically with UT Southwestern. Not every hospital has a transplant center that is very specialized medicine, but there are transplant centers all over the country. And so if you feel a calling on your life to be a living donor, you could present yourself to a transplant center as an altruistic donor, which is just, I would donate to anybody, right? And you fill out an online application and you would list altruistic donor, or if you know somebody who is on a transplant waiting list for a kidney or a liver, you could donate directly to them. But that is kind of step one, is filling out an online application, and then their living donor team takes over. They will get you set up with a very extensive evaluation, get you through the entire process, which is lab work, consultations with your own care team. Very, very extensive, right? From head to toe, I call it the best physical anybody would ever receive. And that just makes sure you're going to be healthy from the beginning all the way through to the end of your life.
And that makes sense. You can't donate if you're not in good shape yourself. So that's an important thing to remember if you're considering this journey. Make sure you're always taking care of yourself along the way as well. Now, how many people do you think that you have helped along the way in your journey? First of all, how long have you been with UT Southwestern, and like how frequently do you have successful matches?
So I've been at UT Southwestern for going on 12 years in this role specifically for about 2.5. So it's really still in its infancy. The champion role itself, there's not very many across the country, right? Not even every transplant center has a dedicated person to help patients navigate this. But I've worked with hundreds already. And it's really just inspiring them, educating them, helping them feel empowered. Many recipients don't want to talk about their health condition. That is a very normal feeling, right? Most are like, I'm already going through it. You're asking me to do something that is well beyond my wheelhouse. So I train people. What is living donation? How do we go about this? Why is it important? Sometimes it's the patient themselves, or they bring on their champions, right? So that's people helping them spread the word. And the champion's champion, right? We just help them learn how to have these conversations, share the message, and bring forward matches. And so it's happening. It's growing, right? We're not in like huge numbers yet, but each and every day we are making a difference, and that's what truly matters.
And I would imagine you're dealing with two personality sets. One, the receiver who's going through their own set of fears and doubts, and then the person that's actually donating who, on paper leading up to it, it's this great feeling like you're going to give someone the gift of life. But, you know, the day before the procedure, I'm sure there's a lot of cold feet and people that get really concerned. So, you know, what's sort of the most common fears that you hear from people on either side of the transaction, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, so, recipients, there's this great struggle of receiving a gift. And it's really with living donation or deceased donation. Either way, they are receiving a gift. And so I try to help them just know, especially if it's a living donor, these are people that love you, that care about you, or somebody who is called and feels that calling in their life to help you. And so they are usually concerned about a donor's future health. How is it going to change them? Is it going to make them deformed in any way, right? So I'm usually that good specimen of, we do very well, right? You wouldn't be able to tell that I'm a donor unless I told you that I'm a donor. Donors themselves are kind of a different breed of people. They go through a very extensive process. They get thrown a lot of things, hey, here's surgical risks, right? Really the best benefit for a donor is you are giving somebody another chance at life. And that creates a very emotional connection. Obviously there's, that I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit scared. Is everything going to be okay? But, transplant centers wouldn't be able to do transplants if donors were not going to be safe. And so it is a very safe procedure, and they do very well long term. And then obviously recipients do well because they get a really good genetically matched organ.
Yeah, which is ideal, obviously. I know there's a lot of testing and using sort of man-made or doctor-made organs and stuff along the way. And although they're getting closer to finding ways to make that successful, it just doesn't quite match up to the genetic match that you can get from another living donor. So I know one question that I hear from even this journey of trying to help one of our dear friends find a liver, when people give you a sliver of a liver, does the liver actually fully regenerate for the donor and for the recipient? Is that truly one of the miracles of the body? The liver can regenerate. Is that accurate?
Yes. So that is what I always call the fun fact, right? That the liver is the only organ able to regenerate. It is very smart. They take up to 50%, maybe just a little bit over sometime, of a donor liver that is given to the recipient. The recipient's liver is removed, and then they get that donated portion. Both pieces grow to a full-size adult organ during the recovery period, which is 2 to 3 months.
That's outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how the first person that figured that out. That's pretty cool. I'm just glad there's smarter people out there than me that know how to do stuff like that. So really an awesome thing that you could potentially do for not only a brother, but maybe altruistically just for anyone that's out there in need. So I highly recommend, if you have that calling somewhere deep in your heart and your soul, that this is, although maybe a bit of a lengthy, in-depth process, the rewards that you get from that are beyond any magnitude that you could consider, because you're also benefiting somebody else to an extreme that you just can't even fathom for them. You're giving them a chance to restart. And I've actually had a friend from high school that had a liver transplant. And then we had a very dear friend of ours whose young son was born very ill and had a transplant, and it gave him some quality years in his life. Unfortunately, he did not make it. He was very young, but someone even my age, and I'm in my 40s, to see somebody that young to need a transplant and get it, and to see their life change, is something so powerful. So this has very much been on my radar to consider. Again, I would have to talk myself into it and sort of test out to see if it's even a possibility for me. But I love the work that you do. UT Southwestern, you guys are based in Dallas, correct?
Correct.
But you guys, obviously, there's donation centers all over the country.
Correct. And so if you feel called on that, you could approach any transplant center across the United States and be able to go through that process.
Yeah, and I highly recommend it. Like I said, you're giving someone the gift of life, and the amount of satisfaction and joy you yourself, the reward you would get from that, I can only imagine is just life altering. With that in mind, sort of any last thoughts or anything that you would encourage people to do, or, is there a site that they can just put their name, or is it still the best just to go to a local donation center and just sign up that way?
I mean, if they wanted to apply to be a donor at UT Southwestern, they absolutely could. That online application is utswlivingdonor.org, and you can absolutely apply that way, or you can go to a local center. The biggest thing is, if you know somebody who is waiting for a transplant, be willing to be their champion. Be willing to speak on their behalf, share their story, talk to people about it. Even that brings an emotional connection that is helping patients in a way that most people would never understand. And so even that is helpful. If you don't want to be a donor, help people share their story.
And that's absolutely free to do, guys. You can share this message here. You can share this radio broadcast. We'll put these links up on our social media pages. Just feel free to share the information, because you never know who might see that and is in a position to take action. So again, spreading the message is free, and something that we can all spend a few seconds to do each time we come across a great story like this. So Taylor, I really appreciate you coming on Crawford Media Group's Public Affairs Radio program. This is such a great message. We're really hoping to get a lot of buzz about this, not only for my dear friend, which is how we met, but also for everyone on this list. Just know that there's people out there. We're rooting for you. We're going to do our best to get some people in the door to try to help you get the organ and the life-changing care that you need. But again, we couldn't do that with people without people like Taylor and UT Southwestern Medical. So again, I truly appreciate your time today. And guys, take the time and get tested. And again, I'll put links around this, but check out UT Southwestern Medical's Living Donor page and see if you could be a match to help somebody get the gift of life. So thank you, Taylor, for your time today.
Thank you so much.